My country, our leaders went into Iraq on the supposition, sort of oblivious to the cultural and psychological realities of Iraq. I once asked a senior member of the Bush administration, I can't tell you who she is, but she, I asked her, didn't you guys get sort of the culture and psychology of Iraq wrong? And she said, I don't really believe in culture. I think if you change the institutions, you change the society. And that is the correct political science answer. It does happen to be the correct answer. And then we had a financial system based on the supposition that bankers are prudent, rational, self-interested creatures who would never do anything stupid en masse. That turned out not to be true. And the issue I care most about in the U.S., and I think here too, we've had 30 years of education reform, all of which has had disappointing results, because in general it's skirted the core issue, which is the individual relationship between a teacher and a student. And people learn from people they love, but if you mention the word love at a congressional hearing, they look at you like you're, Oprah Winfrey or something like that. It's just not the way you talk. And so I decided that you had the most socially attuned people on earth leading, sometimes conducting policy that was completely oblivious to who people really are. And I decided this was not only a political problem, but a wider cultural problem. That we've inherited a view of ourselves that we're divided selves. We have reason over here and emotion over here. And if anything, they're on a teeter-totter. That if reason is up, then emotion is down, or vice versa. And society advances to the extent that reason can suppress the passions. And so this has created methodologies of studying human behavior that try to use the methodologies of physics to do social science, which emphasize the things we can count and measure, and which amputate all the rest. It's created a culture in which we're very good at talking about material things, pretty bad at talking about emotion, very good when we're raising our kids to emphasize skills, but very bad at talking about the most important thing, which is character. And some of the shallow moral philosophy, Alistair MacIntyre, the great philosopher, said we have words like courage, honor, and virtue, but we don't really have systems that link these three things together. And so while I'm covering some of this imperfect view of human nature, I'm looking over at this other world, the world that RSA is in, and I'm seeing people who are actually giving us profounder answers to what's going on deep inside ourselves. And the odd thing is, this world is not primarily led by philosophers and theologians, but it's led by people who study the mind. Cognitive scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists, sociologists, behavioral economists. And, I believe we're in the middle of this tremendous revolution, understanding who we are deep down inside. And I think a lot of this research in all these different fields coheres around three foundational principles. And the first foundational principle is that most of our thinking is below awareness. It's unconscious. And that the conscious mind does maybe 2% of our cognition. But one of the things we're finding is the unconscious is actually quite intelligent. That when Freud thought of his conception of the unconscious, it was a tangled web of erotic urges. But really, the diversity of unconscious processes are really different systems to understand the world. And sometimes those systems are very dumb, they're pretty bad at math, but sometimes they're very smart in helping you detect unconscious or patterns in the world, helping you do a conversation, helping you, if you're an academic, to work on a problem, and then suddenly the solution to that problem will bubble up from your unconscious and you'll have a eureka moment. The second insight after the power of the unconscious is the idea that emotion is not separate from reason, but emotion is the foundation from reason. People who have lesions and can't process emotions are not super smart Mr. Spocks, they're super dumb. Because what emotion does, it assigns value to things. And if you can't assign value to things, your decision-making landscape is hopelessly flat, and you can't make wise decisions. Emotions tell you what to value, they tell you what to remember, they literally wire the fibers of the brain together. And then the third insight is that we're not individual creatures who are really autonomous from one another. We are deeply interpenetrated one from another. And that when you look at me, your brain is reacting to the things I'm doing as if you yourself are doing them. And I think if you take these three foundational principles, you are reminded of sort of a different view of human nature. And to put it in sports terms, the French Enlightenment loses, the British or Scottish Enlightenment wins. That René Descartes, who thought reason was tremendously powerful and put emphasis on finding the abstract laws of universal laws of behavior, that's probably not who we are. But David Hume and Adam Smith and Edmund Burke and others who said that reason is weak, but the sentiments are strong, and that we're primarily social and not rational creatures, they had a much more accurate view of human nature.